the Sacred Knowing of Is video series with Tisziji Muñoz, interview number 19. I had some questions covering chapters 29 to 31. Does time exist in the spirit world?
It is said the spirit world is without beginning, without end. So time does not exist as we can perceive it in the spirit world. If anything, we can use the word infinite, infinity. It's infinite, it just is.
From chapter 29 you write, all earth beings descend from the spirit realm. Are you implying that incarnating on earth is a step down for the spirits to do so?
Well, it is. But I want to make another distinction while we're discussing this in this manner. You have higher spirits and then you have ordinary spirits coming into the earth world. It's a step down in a sense, in vibration, because you're coming down from the astral into the physical, but it's really a step up for them to have an opportunity to progress, because this is purgatory as well as just the earth world. It's an opportunity to prove yourself. This is purgatory, it's no other place. This is also heaven and this is also hell, say, depending on what your lessons are and where you are in the, say, round of karma and purification and progression that you may have earned, let's say, or have somehow or other been handed. So this is the place where you can do it right, you get it right. This is a place where you can come in as a dark spirit and leave as a positive spirit. It's also the same place that you can come in as a positive spirit and get knocked out and leave as a negative spirit. So it depends on your battles, your challenges, and your, say, determination to be either one thing or another thing, say, or free of both the positive and the negative. See? And these battles are not just going to happen in one final battle. No, these are battles that are being waged all the time within us in terms of emotional and mental and psychic concerns. And thus there's a lot of normal confusion in the state of human consciousness. And this is not just due to the individual, this is due to the influences they are open to.
From chapter 29 you write about subtle bodies being used when traveling to subtle dimensions. Do the lower and or progressing spirits appear differently than the higher spirits?
Appear differently in what sense?
When they show up on the material plane.
Well, you have higher spirits in the physical body, and you have lower spirits in the physical body. You have higher spirits outside of the physical body, and you have lower spirits outside of the physical body. The problem with the spirits is that they can show up as higher spirits and not be that. See, they can mark that up. See, they can trick you. See, so you can be tricked by the lower spirits into thinking they're higher spirits. That's what they like to do, to deceive you and manipulate you. See. So you have to know more than appearances. And more than just hearing about things, you need to know beyond appearances who's good and who's bad. So when my relatives were going to their, let's say, their practice, my Aunt Ruka was there to determine who was for real as a good spirit or not. See? And she would be the judge of who was able to inhabit Gracie's mind or body or not. And I've been present when, the spirit was told to leave. They had to leave. Or the spirit was acknowledged, see, accordingly. Now, it's not my practice, but I'm saying I was raised in that practice. In this case, to know better. Go on.
Is one's ignorance and asleepness always a result of inherited blood karma and or some sort of outside influence? Or is it ever a conscious choice for some beings to remain asleep in darkness?
Well, it's always about the individual's progression. And I use that word generally in this particular part because it's really about, to progress or not to progress, to regress. See, we're living in a general condition of regression. I mean, it's already part of the past. It's already part of what hasn't worked, and that's why you're here now. You're here to remake things, redo things, recreate things, so that you can make it work for you, that you can step up instead of, keeping held back or frozen in some kind of time programming or some kind of suffering relative to the past. And most of the people who come to me are people who are sensitive to the fact that they're stuck and frozen in programming relative to the past, and only that. And so they need advice, guidance, and direction to help them properly understand what the potential is of that particular, let's say, basis for coming here, and then what the possibilities are to, say, to move beyond that, and then enter a certain state of potential that gives you back your life, which is the whole purpose of having any spiritual guidance. Is not merely to get access to little things and, let's say, little advantages in the material world, but you need to get your life back, not just be told how to make more money. I mean, that's part of it, maybe the smallest part about it. How do you become happy, for sure, without being dependent upon things, material things? That is, how do you gain spiritual happiness rather than material relief? See? We're talking about material relief. See? And so often psychics are used just to advance the purpose of, securing people some material relief. It's all about the material relief, making people feel comfortable. See, when in fact it's not just about that. See? Jesus was a very intense psychic, being, and his whole purpose was to direct everybody to the heavenly, the spiritual, pure spiritual, and that was a problem for a lot of people. He was not in any way directed towards the material, and yet he's the big savior and all of this, but he's saying forget about the material, which is a shock, right? But basic to the whole purpose of the spiritual is to recover your sense of the spiritual. See? Not just find comfort and happiness here on the material plane, not just that, but to find spiritual happiness despite your material condition, and so on and so forth. See? So, in terms of higher spirits, see, and in terms of people who are influenced in any way by higher spirits to awaken, yes, you're going to know when higher spirits are around because you want to wake up. You see your sleep condition, you see the darkness you're in, and you want to move in that direction because you start to equate darkness with pain and not knowing, and light with knowing and peace, see? And awakeness. See? And that's really what we're here to confront in terms of what the progression is. The progression is about awakening from the darkness and sleep into light realization.
You mentioned that most people that come to you for help are, you said that they're sensitive to being or aware that they're stuck. But there are ever cases where perhaps initially they're not so sensitive to that, but perhaps there's like a higher spirit that makes it painfully obvious to them that they are stuck.
At what point of coming here do you mean?
Well, I guess I'm referring more like in general. There are other cases where the higher spirits would have influence.
Well, I think what you're saying is that sometimes people can come here or to a situation like this because they're in such low spirits and they need a way out. And then sometimes higher spirits bring you to the same place for higher spiritual benefits, higher spiritual purposes. I think that both cases are true. And so the practice then is more, when we're talking about the higher spirits, it's more confirming the way of the higher spirits. But when it comes to the lower spirits, and we're talking about purifying oneself of lower spirit influence. Okay. And so that's what practice is about, purifying yourself of lower spirit influence, working on those programs that are magnetic to the lower spirits, see, that they can use, see, for their own purposes. Darkness feeds off of darkness in that sense. And so, yes, we need to be aware of negative emotion. You know, the psychic field is a very peculiar field for some peeps, but it is very, very real. And for those who are into it and understand that this is a form of yogic practice as much as yoga is a Hindu, physical hatha yoga, it's a form of, say, opening and unraveling the stresses and tensions of the physical body. We need to know that, you have an astral body that is a body in itself that needs yogic, let's say, undoing, but not at the physical level. So knowledge then is really important for those who are at the psychic level, and perception relative to knowledge. Let's say, don't just believe what you're hearing, look for what it is and find out for yourself if these kinds of things are imposing themselves on you, forces or entities and energies, or your children, and start to undo it. Start to wake up the family to what is going on and start to reverse the influence as quickly as possible.
Are most progressing spirits conscious? Do they consciously choose to awaken and progress, or are they called to do so by higher spirits?
Sometimes we can use the terminology higher spirits, but I think there's often in the blood already a program about doing better and being a more noble person, being a more successful person, more altogether better person. So sometimes it's not really just about higher spirits in a sense outside of you, but higher spirits within you that you need to appeal to. And sometimes we have to talk to certain peeps, and then all of a sudden a light goes on inside and say, well, I know that, and I know better now. And through resonance and conversation, you come to terms with something that is already in you that you awaken to, and you start to act on immediately. So we're talking about acting on the good. That's the influence of the higher spirits. So moving towards goodness, and repair rather than destruction and darkness.
When one is called to awaken and progress, is it ultimately impossible to deny such a calling? In other words, would one feel pressured or compelled by the higher spirits to practice?
In some cases, that's true. And can you be called by the higher spirits and then have a choice? Yes. And you can say you're not ready. Most people say they're not ready. Not now, come back later. after this weekend's, blast, right? See me Monday morning, come talk to me later. I got to do this thing now. I'm too far into it. That does show up, right? And I think there's, let's say at least in the psychic circles, an understanding that you're always being nudged towards the positive, and always being asked, to awaken, always being inspired in some way. We tend to deny that. We tend to defy it because of, let's say, selfish instincts and desires and programs that satisfy more physical needs. But the spiritual is always present, in fact. The guides are there, the intentions are there, but it's really a matter of your perceptics and whether or not you're receptive enough to do something about it, because for the most part, most people are wanting to ignore it. They want to shut it out until they're ready. They don't know when that time is going to be, but they're having too good a time in the meantime to be distracted by letting go of what their self needs in the moment.
Chapter 30, which is titled The Spiritual Court of Life. I had a question. Are the majority of low spirits here on earth ignorant or unaware of their own darkness, or are there those spirits who consciously and intentionally choose darkness and all that is associated with it?
I think I'd like to say this categorically, straight up, that we are not by nature dark spirits. We are by influenced by the darkness. We are not by nature dark. That means that relative to light can outdo the darkness. It can overwhelm the darkness. And so the dark avoids the light by nature, let's say, for those that believe that they are here to be the dark. Yeah. Yes, they can ignore the light. See? Only so far. See? And for so long. And it could be an eternity relative to human intelligence and its understanding of what time is. It can be like almost forever. See? But light wins out. Because light is the essence. See? It's the fundamental essence of all that is created, high and low. See? In other words, everything is subject to the burn, and I don't mean hell burn. See? I'm talking about heaven burn. See? The heaven burn. The burn of love. See, the flame of love itself. See? Come on.
Is there a specific type of darkness that is perhaps more threatening and or potentially harmful to other progressive
Well, the
spirits?
demonic, it's called demonic, yes, which shows up as a personification of pure evil and destruction. See, which is a program. It's a deadly game. It's a fatal game. See, but it's a game. See, it's a self-empowering game. See, that which empowers the self of the demon. See, the demonic as such, the evil energy. See, which is not ultimately evil. It is, for the moment, appearing to be evil. See, until it is overwhelmed. See, by the light itself. In this case, I say the power of the heart as love. See? And so you see characterized very often throughout history, and especially in Hollywood, right, where you see like relative to vampirism, you know, and you have the cross or something Christian. That means, let us say, that the light of love and acceptance, say, surrender into love to the infinite degree, where you are just pure love itself. That is offensive to the demonic, see? Because it has a different agenda, which is self-gratifying, limiting, self-limitation, whereas the heart is self-realization to the infinite, see? Openness.
Can denying or ignoring that type of energy provide any sort of protection against it?
That's a good question. Because ignoring it, yes, you have to ignore the dark under certain conditions, but so that's a little protection, see, but it will persist. If we're talking about lower spirits and they're determined to influence you or your children or your family, then they're going to persist, see, especially as it might pertain to a certain place where you live and they feel they have to be there, then they have to be chased out. You have to command the spirits in every case. See, that's your charge as a spirit, to command other spirits to give you your space. Give you your freedom, see? Give you your right to being a spirit. Yeah. And so protection means you have to create barriers between you and those forces. If those forces and let's say influences are going to cause you pain and suffering, or your family, see? Or even to your pets, because you have pets, see? You have to protect your pets. And your animals will be often as your, I guess you might say, your forward line of defense. They're going to be reacting to certain influences, and you have to understand their reactions and their indications to you that they are being disturbed by or being imposed upon by spirits. See? And you have to do something about it and protect yourself. See? And in every case, you have to command them to leave. In every case, you have to try to strengthen yourself and protect yourself. The only way to do it is to shield yourself mentally, psychically, from their infiltration and from their invasion. They want to take you over. When we're talking about being unconscious of the dark forces, then they want to take you over. You're a good host for them. When you become conscious, then you become a force that they have to reckon with, in a sense, and there has to be a battle. See? And if you battle them too much and you are too strong, then they will leave you. They'll find someone who's weaker. You have to be strong. Right? You must be strong. Whether that's from a religious viewpoint or just from having intelligence enough to know that this is about psychophysics here, that these dark influences are for real. And have no doubt about it. Just because you're insensitive to it doesn't mean they're not real and they're not powerful. See? Because at some point you may have the karma to encounter something like that. Somebody you know may be subject to these things. So you have to become intelligent enough to say, well, okay, it's not true for me yet, but it's definitely true for other people. See, and have an open mind and be scientific about it. See, do what you can to alleviate the problems as they may be perceived in terms of negative psychic, emotional issues with children, and fears. I'm talking about fears, undoing fears, these phobias and concerns that are sometimes not just imagined by the children. They have real issues in some cases because they're still children. And we have to trust what they see. It may in fact be more than we can see. And what they're feeling is more than we can feel. So if we don't know and they are certain, then you have to find someone who can determine for you for sure that what the child is experiencing is psychic in nature or psychologic in nature, purely.